una una I kala me kala hua. He halale hua ya nakano we. O kauno ya te ano ine aliane ho I o kai ki mai. Ah hiki mai no ko. Ah hiki puno me ke aloha. Aloha e. Aloha e. Aloha e. Lady Waniwa. May nakupuna, may makanan na.
I have to choose which chair to sit in, so I guess do the large one.
Aloha kako. Again, we'd like to welcome you today to our featured speaker as part of our lecture series entitled Na Iwi Maina Mai, featuring our Kūpuna, who's also Makua, his grandfather, just grandfather, father, and also important person within our community. Speaking today on Na Iwi Maina Mai, names of our ancestors. Today he'll be talking a little bit about the Oʻahu Island Burial Council, and their focus is to respect the Iwi Kūpuna, the bones of our ancestors. One of his greatest objectives is to speak on the, should I just say re-enter? That's what you have here?
Yeah.
The re-enter of the Iwi Kūpuna. He's going to explain it to you further with reverence and balancing and linking these two, the needs of the living, those who are alive today, and respecting those who have passed on. I'd like to start off with just an introduction regarding Na Iwi Maina Kūpuna Mai with this article that I passed out to some of you. I don't know if you've read it yet, but I'm just going to read the opening of it. It was written by La France Kapaka Arboleda. During these trying times as Native Hawaiians, reflection must be given to the degree of accomplishments we have reached. Foremost on my mind is the creation of the Island Burial Councils. I pay humble tribute to all those courageous warriors at the battlefront of Honolulu, both past and present. Their actions became the rallying call for change, a call that allowed for a working process that has proven itself many times over in determining protocol and responsibility in the care and disposition of our Iwi Kūpuna. Within many aspects, these individuals braved the challenges, and not without pain or discord, but with clear knowledge of accepting the kuleana responsibility of those ancestors who passed this earthly existence. In cases where the determining process has not been optimum and accountable, they continue to work with the process, reaching decisions with notification of direct ohana and or cultural affiliation. As team members, both Hawaiians and non-Hawaiians has its challenges. Yet they strive to overcome and continue to the best of their ability. I'm going to stop there because Van Horn Diamond represents the brave people who are taking responsibility for the ancestors and the remains that are found. He is actually the director of the Oʻahu Burial Council. But on every island, we have these burial councils. When a highway is built, or a shopping center is built, and we continue to industrialize the islands, as many of you know, the sacred remains of our ancestors get excavated. And we need to deal with these issues of sacredness and responsibility. Therefore, welcome our speaker today, Van Horn Diamond, with your aloha.
Oh, thank you. Hopefully there'll be as much enthusiasm when we're all done. I want to thank you for being here. It's really nice to see so many people. I know some of you have to be here because Mr. Edmondson has you here, but I think we're going to have fun. If you happen to have any particular question, don't hesitate to ask it. I can't guarantee the answer you get, but you'll get an answer. Okay? I must preface whatever I say with the following observation. What you're about to hear is not from book learning as such. Most of the responses that you'll get from me is a result of happening by circumstance. You know, nothing's ever an accident if you're Hawaiian. Okay. Circumstances have provided the opportunity to learn by having to do. For example, and I guess this is a way of introducing myself to you without all that stuff that you have in front of you. I got involved with Iwi Kūpuna as a result of going along with a distant relative. Her name is Nalani Oles, and she is a recognized claimant to the Iwi Kūpuna at Mokapu. And they had a lot of huki in the beginning. And so there was an effort back in about 1998 to bring all the people together again. And so she was a little bit uncomfortable in going to a particular meeting. So we all said, okay, go along as moral support. And so I went with her to a meeting that involved some of the people that were claimants for Mokapu. Now, I need to step back for a minute. Mokapu is called, on the western side, the Mokapu inventory. There's roughly 1,350 plus individual sets of native ancestral Hawaiian remains, okay, from that peninsula that the Marine Corps presently resides in. They have been acquired over a long period of time. Most of them were stored at Bishop Museum. They continue to be there, okay? And so the object, and it was under NAGPRA. NAGPRA is separate from the state. That stands for, does anybody know what NAGPRA stands for? It's in the paper, that's why. Okay. Native American Graves Protection Repatriation Act. That is the law that governs the return of remains and artifacts, okay, to Native Americans. And in that law, Hawaiians are also situated, okay? So that individual sets of kupuna were situated there. So we went to this particular meeting, and you know, I have to tell you, one of the things that you acquire over a period of time, you have these little buzzwords and little sayings and isms that come to you when you get older, and they kind of help you steer yourself through things. So one of the isms that I learned a long time ago is whenever there is change, there is discomfort. Okay? Some people are going to like it, some people ain't going to like it, some people are going to want to adjust to it, some people are going to resist to it. And so instead of saying uncomfortable, I just use the word discomfort. So that covers the whole spectrum. Okay? Some people are going to get poked in okole, and other people are going to get sliced, and other people are going to bleed, and other people are going to get emotional and cry. But there is change happening. And so the responsibility when you encounter the change is depending on where you're at. So in this particular instance, the bringing together of all these people created a little bit of discomfort. But the discomfort also sparked something else. The Marine Corps started to take responsibility. Before then, the Navy had it, and it had gone to court. So starting in about 1998, the Marine Corps took responsibility and convened all the recognized descendants for this particular meeting. It set the stage for another meeting of recognized claimants and possible others. That happened in the spring of 1998. And by June, the so-called, quote, descendants started to talk together with the Marine Corps on what to do. Come August, by August, those that wanted to participate had filed, had been recognized by the Marine Corps, and then were bona fide claimants to deal with what's called repatriation. Okay? Now, repatriation is a nice word. It's different from the state law. So I got to introduce the state law now. NAGPRA deals with the turning over of Iwi Kūpuna or artifacts to someone or some entity. Reinterment deals with the action of taking the kupuna and only the kupuna. Artifacts are not really under the state law. If they're directly associated with the kupuna, then they go with the kupuna, right? So under the state law, we deal with their reinterment, specifically with their reburial. We don't go through the process of this is going to be turned over, da-da-da-da-da, per se. That's just part of the process. And I got to correct one thing, and it's not Aloha's fault. I am not the director of the burial sites program. That is a staff position. It belongs to the state of Hawaii Department of Land and Natural Resources. It is a program under Land and Natural Resources in Historic Preservation, History and Culture branch. What happens is the law provided that in addition to staff people to do work, that they needed to have people who could be representative of the Hawaiian community per island, or per island, so that there are 5 island burial councils, and there are what is called district reps. In other words, the island is divided up into districts. The districts are not conventional. The districts actually reflect the old maps. So there are 2 representatives on the island of Oahu that represents the kona side of this island. That is from essentially Mauna Loa out in Hawaii Kai, all the way to Red Hill, where Kaiser Hospital is, right there. That's the Kona district, mountain to the sea. Okay? Then the next one is Ewa. It's from Red Hill. It includes Mililani, all the way to Ewa, Pearl City, and everything in between. Okay? Then there is Waianae Coast. The Waianae district representative is from Ewa, where Kahi Point is, all the way the whole coastline, plus the old map shows you go through Kolikoli Pass, and we're approximately where Whitmore Village is, that parcel over there, and there's a heiau over there. Right around there is also Waianae. So the Waianae district includes the coastline plus over the mountain to that parcel. It excludes Waialua. Waialua has its own district. So you can see now that the districting is a little bit different from what we're used to knowing. Okay? And so there are district representatives. And then in relation to us, on usually a 3-to-1 basis, there are land owner representatives. So sitting on the Oʻahu Island Burial Council presently is a person that represents a major landowner on the windward side. That's usually, and then Campbell Estate has been historically represented, and so has Kamehameha Schools Bishop Estate. The vacancy for Kamehameha Schools Bishop Estate, there's a vacancy presently for that landowner slot. Okay, so that's how the Oahu one is. We meet monthly. Normally we would meet on the 2nd Wednesday of every month, but don't run away from class this week because we don't have a meeting on this Wednesday. Next month we do. And if you're interested in Waialua, there'll be an interesting case up. We start normally at 10 o'clock. We never know when we end. We usually end when we run out of quorum. It depends on the agenda. But the one for Waialua will be interesting because we have in one case 2 sets of iwi, one that's been found, previously discovered, that's a definition. And so the kuleana there is the burial councils exclusively. We determine what should happen to it. I have to, excuse me, I'm finding another thing in my head. One of the things I always learned when I was going to school, and it still happens, the front row is always a ball-ahead row. It's always empty. You ever notice that? I always think about, my parents always sat in the back of the class. When my kids come to school, I sat in the back of the class when you go to the PTA meetings. And the pattern continues. There's no discomfort yet. Nobody wants to sit in the front chair. Unless your last name requires you to be in the front, then you're stuck forever. Just came to mind, sorry. Anyway, on the same issue, there will be another one that there was Iwi that was repatriated under NAGPRA and was improperly buried. It was buried by accident. That's what happened. It was supposed to go into a cemetery that's adjacent to the owner's property, but they did it at night. Okay, so when they did it, and this guy is trying to develop his parcel, he found the Iwi. So now something has to be done with that. So it's going to be an interesting case on how to deal with it. And it's always trying to balance the needs and interests of the living with those that are not. This one here is going to be relatively easy. Going back to the NAGPRA thing, so anyway, that's how I got involved. So several of us applied and we became claimants under NAGPRA, and we've been involved with that. In that particular instance, the Kūpuna have been repatriated. In other words, they've been officially transferred over to the custody of the claimants. There's there are originally 21. Okay, some have fallen on the wayside, which is normal. So there's roughly about 15 of us left. The process now is to try to find a place. We've had disagreements on where and how to bury. Okay, we've been lucky in that the museum has, with some discomfort, continued to care for the Kūpuna and keep it secure. So they're all together. Families can go visit anytime they want. They're situated, and there's a process. Not anybody can get inside. Only families and recognized, and only they can authorize anybody else to go in. So that's where the Kūpuna are right now, and they're waiting for it. The disagreement, I can tell you straight out that one of the problems is there were some people that believed that the Kūpuna needed to be buried in platforms. And there are some of us that believe that it ought not to be. And some of us were about the business of determining that. And some of us happened to be lucky enough. We found a cave, and we believe that the Kūpuna belong in a cave. So that's been, the rub and the discomfort between the families. I think one of the good things that has happened as a result of this is that the families have taken more responsibility and authority, and by virtue of that, organizations that have been recognized as claimants have kind of stepped back for now, because there were organizations that were pushing for platforms. Now, what I'm about to share with you is an opinion, okay? In other words, it's only one point of view. There are many points of view. It's really important to say. I do not believe that there is a need for platforms on the island of Oʻahu, per se. I believe that platforms properly belong in areas where you can't put them in the sand, or you can't find a cave, or you can't put them in soil that is deep. In other words, like the rocky side on the Big Island. There's no way in hell you're going to be able to dig through the rocks, the coral. You're going to have to. So it makes sense. If you can't find a cave to put them in the mountains, then maybe it makes sense to have platform. But if you can find a place to put them where they belong that's natural to the area, then why not put it there? And that's an opinion. Okay.
Explain the platform so they understand.
Platform is, how should I do this? Platform is like a rectangular shape. It's elevated off the ground. There are some people that espouse to be really expert in it, one of whom is a guy by the name of Billy Fields. And for good or for bad, he does do it and has done it. And what you do is you raise it. In other words, you raise it off the ground, you create what in effect is a cavity, and you put sand in it, and then you cover it over so that the kupuna are then resting in the sand, and then you secure it and you cover it over, then you build this platform. And it's pretty much rectangular, and it's there. The one that comes to mind, there are two that come to mind. One was built at Hickam Air Force Base by Fort Kamehameha entry. You know, if you go through the back gate at Hickam and you're on the way, you'll see some residents on the left side. Then there's going to be like, before you get, there's a clubhouse down that side. Just before you get there, there's a platform. Hopefully it's better taken care of than when I saw it. One of the, you know, here's another opinion coming quick. It's really fine and good to have kupuna buried and etc. But you know the kuleana is forever. So it's not simply the burial. The burial is the beginning. The burial treatment is the beginning. If you're only going to bury them and then leave it to chance, then what is your responsibility? You know, I use the terminology because I'm not really in Hawaiian language. That's just one of the generational things that happens. You know, but I can say to you that the kuleana of caring for Iwi Kūpuna is until eternity ends. And it's for our families who no longer cast the shadow. Okay? That's where I'm coming from. And so, until eternity ends is a long, long time. Okay? And so when a family comes forward to take responsibility for the care and custody and security, the reverence comes with it, and that means that's forever. So one of the responsibilities of the family is to pass it on to the next generation so it doesn't get forgotten. And that's why I'm talking about the one that's out there at Hickam. You know, I saw it in about 2001. It had been built, it was all there. But you know, what I saw was the rebar sticking up on the ends, number one. Number two, all of a sudden, instead of an ant hill, it became an ant nation. All the sand that was inside had been pushed out by the ants. The ants dominated. And some of the flora that had been planted had died. So the question becomes, whose kuleana was this to bury in the first place? Where are they? Okay, that's what I mean. And then another one I saw that had been done by the state. It was done by Westlock. It was a skateboard ramp when we found it. Okay, hear the words? Skateboard ramp. Here's this low platform, supposed to be taken care of by people, right? And the most that's being taken care of is they've made platforms for kids to come ramping. Good practice, wrong place. Okay, so that's what I mean by kuleana. So that's what's happened at Mokapu. At Mokapu, for example, the argument has been over how and where to bury. So there is a cave, there's kupuna going to be buried there. The understanding is the ones that don't fit in the cave, because there's so many, if there are any that don't fit, then they will address it in terms of a possible platform. Okay? And that's what's been agreed to, and that's what's being pursued. Okay. The Iraqi war has caused a little bit of a problem, and some people who wanted platforms have pursued the need for federal dollars to build a platform. There are those of us that are saying, we don't need the money. Just give us the opportunity and we'll bury them. It's been too long. Okay? So, I better stop. You know why? Because your buns are getting sore already. So, let's activate the other end. You got any questions that you want to ask about anything that we've gotten so far or anything more? Do it now.
Do you know anything about the Kmart?
You mean the Walmart?
Walmart, yeah.
I can give you a short answer and a long answer. I'll give you the short answer first. Yes.
The long answer.
The longer answer is, I need to preface. You need to all know that there is still a court case pending. So I will not say anything that will affect the court case, because the Burial Council is involved with that, as well as the state. Having said that, I can tell you some things that have transpired. Okay? The facts that I can share with you are the following. In December of 2000, this is 2005, so in December of about 2002 going into 2003, yeah, okay, Iwi was found. It was determined by the state based on preliminary things. You need to know that when there is ever a project that's going to be built, like a Walmart, etc., there is a requirement under planning. Oh. Alulike. I know, but the face came. Iwi was found, and under the state law, before there's ever a project that happens, at least on Oʻahu, the city requires a review by historic preservation. And historic preservation has three branches. One is history and culture, one is archaeology, and then one is architecture. The archaeologists take a look at it, and they require certain kinds of preliminary things to take place. That occurred. Based on the findings of the information and research, it was determined that the likelihood of remains being found at that point in time, and based on the history of the property, was that it was, not likely. The probability was very low. And there's no guarantee, it's a best judgment kind of situation. So they went forward with that. What transpired is, Iwi was found at the north end. Now, you gotta visualize this. Okay, is that, there's a piece of chalk over here. And the dog, the bank with the dog, the collie? He's at this building over here. And then there's a dog hospital over here. It's one of the oldest things in town, the blue one. Okay? So you just kind of know roughly where it's at. Okay? When they were building and when they were constructing, the first set of Iwi was found over here. Okay? That was the very first set. When they had an archaeologist on board, and he's one of the better ones in town. I shouldn't say that. That's not being fair. That means that I'm giving him too much credit, and I ought not to. Okay, but his name is Aki Sonodo, and he comes from a family that's been involved in historical stuff and archaeology things. Okay, here and throughout the Pacific Basin. Once that happened, he went back to the Walmart people and said, we need to monitor this property more closely. So it became daily monitoring. Then what happened is, at this end over here, Iwi was found. Okay, and then began the process. Okay, when the Iwi was found, it's deemed inadvertent. Okay, it's not, and that's important terms. Previously discovered is, you're going to run into it, and you have to do certain kinds of steps. Inadvertent means exactly that. You've come upon it. Okay, for want of another way of saying it. So the Iwi was inadvertent. That was the determination. Once that happened, then the burial sites program has the responsibility of making a decision whether or not the Iwi found should be taken out temporarily or buried right where you find it.
With a marker, or?
I'm not going to say how. Okay, we'll just stay with the process for now. Okay, so this is around December. Okay, of 2002, going into 3. Now, the department and so Aki, they continue. A decision was not made. Okay. Then additional Iwi was found. It's basically going in this process here, and then only one up here. So all the Iwi is right here along Sheridan and Makaloa. Practically all of it. The sum total right now, the sum total back in 2004 was 44 plus. It's now above that. Okay, as of 2005, it's now above that. The process was, given that certain things happened, there needed to be a determination made by the state as to whether or not the remains that were found, and they kept on revealing themselves, and that's another bias of mine. My bias is I say they reveal themselves. Okay, they let themselves know that they need something. So you got a question?
Is that 44 Kūpuna actual bodies or just bones?
44 individual sets of remains.
44 individuals.
Some are whole, some are part. Okay, but there's 44 individual sets of remains. Okay. We come into 2004. There is a meeting that is involved the department and Burial Council representatives. We take a look at it. There's discussion. We go through a process, and then once Iwi's found, and you have a situation like this, they're inadvertent. The state has a responsibility of notifying the public so that people who believe that they are connected to the Iwi Kūpuna can come forward and provide their information. Okay, so that's what took place. A lot of people, and this is an opinion. Got to make sure I say that. This is an opinion. There's a lot of people that have been ragging Walmart about stuff, but in this particular instance, I have to say to you that Walmart has not been a bad guy. They're the ones that went about the business to underwrite the announcements so that they would be timely, so that the families who wanted to come could register and qualify for it. They have not been balking at all. They have been responsive to whatever families and the state have indicated should be done. Okay, that's really important. They even, after some descendants and prospective descendants were identified, they convened them all to find out what the hell to do. Okay? So they have been, as much as possible, proactive, and that's to their credit. And the reason why I say that is, I spent, before I got involved in this and before I was involved with Aluliki, for example, I spent over 20 years working as a union official or representative. So for me to say that about Walmart, knowing its history elsewhere, I have to give credit where credit is due. I have not crossed that threshold to shop yet. And I'm not going to. Okay, I didn't even go to the dedication that we got invited to, even though we were invited to go. I'm not going to do that. That's my own principles. But I still have to acknowledge that Walmart has not been a bad corporate entity. They have tried to be responsible and responsive. That's important to say, because there are others that don't do that. There's one down Vesiland that is a real song and dance. Anyway, the first order of business for the Burial Council now, because its kuleana is to formally recognize those who believe that they are lineal or cultural descendants. There are two definitions under state law. If you can connect yourself by genealogy, etc., to the remains, you can achieve what is called lineal descendant status. And you have to satisfy the council with the data. Now what happens? The process is you come, you say, you provide the information, and then it's listed how you provide the proof. It is evaluated by a staff person, a genealogist on staff, and he reevaluates it and he makes a recommendation to the Burial Council. The Burial Council has to be satisfied with the recommendation. If it's not satisfied with the recommendation, it has the option of going contrary or deferring. Okay, that's important to know. So, some people tried to become lineal and they did not achieve it. Most of them became cultural. Cultural means that you come from the same ahupua'a, from the district, the moku, okay, and you can prove that you are tied to the area. Now, where this is, the district that the Walmart parcel is in goes all the way to Kekoʻolani Avenue in Waikiki. The district that we're talking about, the border on the east side, okay, is Kekoʻolani Avenue, right? And comes all the way to Kewalo Basin. So anybody from the mountain to the sea that's in that district, okay, within the confines, can try to claim to take responsibility for the Iwi. And if they can demonstrate that, they will more likely than not, they will achieve what's called cultural descendancy. Okay, and it seems like a little bit too broad, but when you look at it in terms of the federal law only has two definitions. You are either a lineal descendant, or you are a Native Hawaiian organization. There's nothing else. So if you put your family on the line and you cannot connect to this Iwi is my great 4 times grandfather, you're not a lineal. Then what happens is you become a Native Hawaiian organization if you can connect up under the federal law. That means you compete with a Hui Malama, Office of Hawaiian Affairs, Hawaiian Civic Club, neighborhood board that can claim that they have Hawaiian ties. You're all going to be in the same pot. Okay? Under the state law, you at least got one more chance at it. You got lineal, then you got family again as cultural descendant. Then you have another definition that most people don't know about, and that is appropriate Hawaiian organization. And it's defined. Then there's an appropriate Hawaiian ethnic organization. Okay? So you got 4 chances, but there's a pecking order. Okay? In other words, if there are no lineal descendants, then you take into account what cultural descendants have to say. If there are none of those, then you take into account, provided they come forward, appropriate Hawaiian organization. And if you don't have any of these, then it's us poor guys that are on the Burial Council, we have to make the determination. So we become we're the last bastion of relief. Okay, we're the surrogates at the end. We get it by default. In this one over here, we began the process of recognizing descendants back in 2003. Took that all the way till 2004. Okay, so there's like, I forget, there's as many descendants as there are Iwi presently. Okay, and they had diverse points of view. Some said leave them in place, some said move them out, some said leave some in place, give some to me and I'll go bury them someplace else. They had the whole spectrum. I guess the best way is to call it one. There was one ohana. These 4 names, these 4 families all related to each other. Okay? The first family that came forward was the Kekoʻolas. And then they talked story and they talked to the Makahis. So they came forward first. Then some time elapsed and the Keana'ainas came to realize that they were associated, and so they came forward. And then the fourth one was Luka, the most recent. Initially, they achieved cultural descendancy. That was like in 2003. Kekoʻolani did in Makahi. Okay? Their tie is they had land that's affiliated with this area. They have a pattern. They own land. It's recorded, turn of the century, even though the family is from Kohala. Okay? Okay, they had an LC, in other words. Bona fide land ownership, historically confirmed. Okay? And the irony of it all is, when they were getting ready to, then we come into about February of 2004. The other thing I have to tell you is I'm a messy person, so this is scrambled eggs, so don't mind it. Around February 2004, after all the information had been provided, the Burial Council unanimously voted, based on all the information that was provided, that all the kupuna that were situated here needed to be taken out. And they needed to be buried together in one place on the property. Okay? And that was based on a recommendation that came from the Kekoʻolas and the Makahis. And part of the rationale was not only what we saw as district representatives, we went to see the thing and where they were and all the rest of it. But in addition to that, they were the only ones that were the closest to anybody else. All the other guys one came from Papakolea, one came from Paoa Valley, okay? One came from the other end, one came from Kewalo Basin, but none were proximate to the land. And at that point in time, their parcel was believed to be on part of Walmart. So the council took all the information. We even got cursed. Okay, that's on part of the record. We got cursed by somebody from there, and we made the recommendation. The state makes the final decision because they are deemed inadvertent. Okay? We made the recommendation by a unanimous vote to take the kupuna out. That's as of February 2004. Okay? Then we went silent again. Then a plan was laid out between the department and Walmart through Aki Sonoda's archaeology firm on what to do. They laid out a burial treatment plan and how it's going to do and everything. It consisted of what's called an inventory. In other words, one of the keys is they start to identify the kupuna and see whether or not there needs to be iwi reassembled and connected back together again. And that became a controversy. We come now into July, August, September of 2004. And around the summertime, late spring of 2004, the taking them out happened. So in order to have that taken care of, there was, for want of another way of saying, there was like a service. Actually, it was a ritual, but I'll use the word service for now. Okay, and a person that was working there as the safety officer, he was taking all the things and he saw his auntie's name as one of the people invited as a guest, who happens to be on the Burial Council on the island of Hawaii. Her name is Ruby McDonald, and she happens to be a Keanaaina. And her nephew was the safety officer for Walmart. And he didn't even know he was connected at that point. Okay? And he plays music. So, two Chalangalangers, right, see each other, talk stories, he says, that's my auntie. I said, well, then you better talk to her and figure it out, because you must be related to this thing. So they did the follow through and found out, and then they filed. They subsequently filed to become lineal. They started to submit all their papers. They started to get evaluated. There was reluctance on certain people to give them recognition. The Burial Council made the determination in December that the family was lineal. It doesn't, see, the challenge is, it doesn't take away the authority of the state to make decisions. It simply says that it makes good common sense to consult with this family that's lineal now on what you're going to do. And that's where it is right now. Okay? It hasn't gone any further than that. The lineal descendants in this particular instance are saying the inventory needs to be completed. In other words, there is Iwi that's still outstanding that needs to be reconnected. That they should be buried whole to the extent possible. The state has taken another position. Okay? They've said, this is if we take the femur bone and you take this as best as possible, you do that, then there's as whole as it can be. If you go any further, then you're doing archaeology exercises that are not relevant to burial. That's a disagreement. And so the state set that in February 2005, Iwi would be buried. Guess what? It ain't happened yet. For some reason or another, it ain't happened yet. That they found difficulties in trying to reconnect the Iwi sufficiently to have them buried. I ain't saying why, but that's what happened. And that's where it's at. Okay?
So, that's February 2005, there was an article in the newspaper.
That's
right?
correct.
I saw that article in the newspaper.
Yep.
I called you about that article in the newspaper.
Yep.
And it will remain in the balance until, okay, will it be buried back at Walmart?
Yes.
It is for sure.
Yes.
On that corner?
Yes.
And if they're gonna, so there's gonna be no...
One of the arguments is going on right now, and that's not out of this room, but one of the arguments between the lineal descendants and the department is the vaults. See, when they had the discussions, and when the Kianainas, Lukas, and Kikalas, and Makahis were involved with the other descendants, there was discussion in which it also included the state. The Kikalas said, we support the burials, but we also are concerned about the inventory. The inventory needs to be completed. The inventory needs to put all the kupuna as whole as possible back into the ground. That's their basic position. They are not opposed to the burial, they're not opposed to the vault, but the vault agreement is conditioned on the inventory. The department and the administrator at this point in time does not believe that that is part of the understanding. So I think that's part of the reason why it hasn't happened. But that's just a view.
So
Okay?
regarding this vault situation, like if they bury the Iwi Kūpuna now, right? Are
Yep.
they gonna like lay cement over it? They're gonna make one mark? Are they gonna, anything? Memorial, monument?
There's going to be a memorial of some sort.
Oh, okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay.
And tied to that is that families have already started to talk about the follow-through. Okay? I can say that back in 2004, one of the conditions that was of concern to us is that when we being the Burial Council, when we determined that they should be taken out, we said we understood at that point in time that on Makaloa there was going to be a sewer line. And that the sewer line, Kupuna don't know the difference between a road and a sewer line. They pop wherever they want to. Okay? But if there were Iwi found when they would reline the sewer, put the sewer thing, that those kupuna found needed to be buried with the kupuna from Walmart. Fortunately, that hasn't happened. So there is none. But that was a condition that we had also put in. Okay? But that's where it is right now. Question?
So where are the kupuna waiting to be buried?
The kupuna presently are in a trailer that's air conditioned and secured. People always talk that it's under the ramp, but it's actually it's really well taken care of. Okay?
It's still there on
It's still there. It hasn't been off the property. You can't get in unless you clear. Well, some people came from Oʻahu, for example, at night, and they thought, or they claimed they were from Oʻahu, and they wanted to inspect the Iwi, and they didn't get in. Okay? Question.
What's Walmart in all this? I mean, like, in the end of the state says, okay, you need to build a memorial. Who pays for the state?
Walmart has made the commitment to take care.
So it's not their fault that the decision hasn't been made.
No.
Okay.
Okay? It's not.
So once the decision is made, they'll make the appropriate thing.
That's right. And so Walmart has said to the state, you want this to be buried, then there are city permits and all that stuff that must precede anything that's going to happen. So you need to lay out a game plan on when you're going to do it and how this is going to happen and all that other stuff. Okay?
So did they actually already do construction over that area where they were found? They haven't.
Yes, it's all done.
That's what I was gonna say, with the cement and everything else.
It's all done. That's why they were taken out.
Okay, so how they gonna put it back in, dig it all up again?
There's another place.
Oh, okay.
There's another place.
That's okay.
That's been designated.
Okay.
Families, Walmart, state all know and have all agreed to the site.
So that part is unchanged. It's still
Same place.
same place.
Yep. Okay. And that's different from what you hear and from what people say in the media. You really need to listen more closely. Sometimes words have more than one meaning.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, like they say, well, they're stuck underneath the ramp. What? What is under the ramp? In a garbage dump or what? It isn't that there. It's in a trailer that's air conditioned, that's taken care of, that the Kekoʻolani have come to clean, to take care of. I have to give credit to them. Before they became lineal descendants, they were already there helping the archaeologists clear off all the lime and sand from the kupuna that had been buried. Because one of the things that happened is certain people in their ambition and in their point of view on how things should be taken care of, they came in and they brought in coral and they covered all the kupuna. Okay? Sounds good on one side, right? Protected from the sun, none of all this crap going to happen. But now take into account, the water table over there is very high. Number one. Number two, when it rains, the water from the top and the water from the bottom comes up, the kupuna are going to get invaded. They start to get destroyed. They start to get connected by the lime. All of that has taken place since the beginning of the middle of 2003, when they were covered over. So when they were taken out, the additional burden of reconnecting the inventory, quotes inventory, of the archaeologist was, you got to clear off all the gunk first. And you cannot do it, you just can't come with a giant thing and shoot it with water. Okay? It's by hand. And the Kekoʻolani family has come forward and did it. Some other people who are also descendants complained about it. So then the state listened to one side and told the Kekoʻolani that they cannot do that anymore. So that caused less people to help clear the inventory. That's the part you don't see in the paper. That's the part that's not talked about. So, and it depends on point of view. I mean, there isn't even the discussion. If I can leave one more thought with you about this thing, it comes to mind. Please, when you look at this stuff, listen to the words, then watch the feet. Okay? We used to say that about Manu Gurus. Okay? There are some people that come out and go, yeah, 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 yeah. But they're over here. And they're shuffling on this side. And they're talking over here. Okay? And you also hear this now within the Hawaiian community. They use the terminology too often. They use the term protocol. You know what protocol is? Do you know what protocol is? It's different from ritual, you know. A protocol is when the President of the United States gets off the plane, who's the next person that gets off the plane with him? Or gets off with him at the same time? No! The governor of the state of Hawaii gets off. If they're riding on the same plane together, the two of them come off when they land in Hawaii. Why? Because the protocol says the President of the United States is the President and the Chief Executive of all the states. The governor is the Ichiban of the state of Hawaii. That's the protocol. Those two get off the plane together. They're equal on this land. That's a protocol. A ritual is the prayer. What are the prayers? Really important, because you listen to some of these guys, they go, we're going to do a protocol. And you go, what the hell is that? Is it something to eat? You know, be careful of the words. They can take you down a wrong track. If you have some things and you're interested in seeing another Circus Maximus, next week, starting Sunday at the East West Center, and running Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, there is a NAGPRA review committee. They will be going over Kaihaʻi, the 84 items that were buried, that were loaned to an organization, buried by the organization, and never returned by that organization, so that the other recognized claimants could inspect them to help determine what they are, number one, and number two, denied the opportunity to have them repatriated to them. And it gets down to what is a kuleana. You know, one of the opinion I share with you now is, over time, families now are a little more ma'a to what it is to take kuleana for the reinterment and care and custody and reverence of kupuna. Hawaiian organizations that have that as their purpose need to understand that they need to support families, not to preempt families. And I'm citing an opinion now, because my family is one of those that got preempted in the burial at Kaihaʻi. Okay? So I'm saying from that perspective. There's also another set of iwi that belongs with the Kaihaʻi one that's up at the National Park. That's also on the agenda. Our family is saying, you leave that alone until you resolve this other one. Don't compound the problem. Don't try to repatriate, because it's only self-serving one organization. And I'll tell you what the organization is, I'm not afraid. The name of the organization is Hui Malama. Iwi Kūpuna, Hawaii. They started out, I really believe that they had a good purpose, but they filled a void. But the void now is no longer the same. There are families now that know more. There are families now that are taking responsibility. Hui Malama needs to step back and be supportive of that. They cannot preempt. What they did over there is they said, our point of view is stronger than any family's point of view and any family's kuleana responsibility to the kupuna and the artifacts. That's what they said. And we're not going to give them back, so the hell with you. And they've got Hawaiian homelands supporting them because it's buried on their property. That's the reality of the 84 artifacts. Then look at the word. I don't know whether this is correct or not, but when I hear the word moipu, it's an incomplete word, number one. Number two, when I hear moipu in terms of Iwi Kūpuna, it refers to when an ali'i passed away, he had people that crossed over with him so that he would be protected when he went into the other world. They died with him. They were buried with him. That's what moipu means to me. It doesn't mean artifacts. Artifacts need to be assessed in terms of what is. See, so there's a difference of perspective over here, you know, and where it comes from. And so when you're looking at that, and I know you folks are from anthropology, right? Okay, so when you're looking at that, please take into account that not everything is in red and white and blue, or black, or purple. You really need to sift through everything, okay? And that there are families out there that have foundations, okay? You know, it's not a catch-all. It's not a catch-all. Some of us we're on OJT, man, I'm telling you. Every day that passes. Everything I've shared with you today has been learned over since 1998, 99. Some families have come forward. And you know, and the other thing that's really hard when we're talking about this is, at least I was told this, and I believe it now, because I do it with my kids and grandkids. I got told, if an elder wants to tell you something and you're not ready for it, you don't get it. You don't get it unless they think you're ready. And if they die before it, that's the way it goes. You know, so there's a lot of things that happen. You know, and hopefully we've contributed a little bit to your awareness as to some of the things that are going down. One of the things that the state law provides is that wherever you bury kupuna, it's supposed to be registered and so that you know approximately where they're buried, so that in future times, you know, when people build stuff or things happen in the future, you know Iwi was found there and Iwi were buried. But not everybody practices that to the T. And the Wailoa one next month is a good proof of the pudding. Okay, because the Iwi that was supposed to be buried in the cemetery, they didn't have authorization to put it in the cemetery in the first place. In the second place, it was Iwi that was repatriated under federal law. And so they failed also to, I believe, we're going to find out next month when we ask the question, was it registered with the state? If the answer to that question is no, then they've done two things that they were supposed to do that they didn't do. You know, and having said all of that, there are a lot of examples that are positive. I need to say that too. You know, back in 2001, 2002, some of you may recall that there was a little bit of a lumps and bumps in the community when families recognized from Waikiki determined that they wanted to have all the Iwi that was found along the waterline on Kalakau Avenue would be relocated and buried. You need to know that the memorial that was built in front of the zoo was designed by the families. They went from ground zero. They designed it. They provided the rationale, the reasoning, the spiritual reasoning for it. And then when it took it upon themselves, together with Duke Bainham and the mayor, I have to give them both credit. It's to their credit, regardless of what anybody says. They were two people that came and had the opportunity. They helped bury that kupuna that's there in that memorial, 5 o'clock in the morning. Okay? They came and helped bury. They didn't have to. There were trustees from Bishop Estate that wouldn't touch the Iwi. And here are these two hollies, they really don't know that much, right? Hand them the thing and they take it with respect and gingerly passing it on. The mayor jumped into the truck and started to pull all the kupuna that had been wrapped in another place to pass it on to the people and so it was buried. We're talking about 150 individual sets of kupuna that were buried in that memorial. And they all face sunset. They were all buried before the sun came up. All the traditions of Hawaiian, all the spiritual things were all honored. And the families did it all. The families are the one that said to Hui Malama and other organizations, step back, this is our kuleana, we will do it. So the families wrapped, transported, buried, covered it over, designed it, lobbied for it at the city council. Okay? And it's to the credit of Duke Bainham because he was the council person from that area, and to the mayor. The mayor took money out of his own personal pocket to help pay for that memorial. Nobody knows that. He never bragged about it. He never did, look at me, I did all of this. Right? I mean, you have to give credit where credit is due. If they do something good, give them credit. I mean, everybody loves to cut everybody's okole. And so, if you look at it, you'll find that that memorial has 8 sides. One of the families there is the Kekoʻolani. They are descendants of Kekoʻolani. One of their aumakua is the spider. Okay, 8 sides. What is the spider in the ocean? It's the he. Okay, what is the Pleiades? 8 sides. Hello? So who is the principal one in moving all of this? The Kekoʻolani. Okay, and all of us support it because my family was over there too. So please know those kind of things. That's what I talk about when I talk about, when we talk about ritual and spiritual things, that's ritual and spiritual things. And when we got together to talk, we all knew who everybody was. The protocol was automatic. You don't have to talk. You just know. The Kekoʻolanis come from Lili'u. The diamonds come from Kanekapole. So we all talk. We all come to agreement. This is what we want to do. And then one of the Kekoʻolanis who now lives on the Big Island, he designed it. Then another person came forward, he says, we need benches. So families can come and sit, and meditate if they want to. Guess what? There's benches inside. And if you look at the railing around it, you will see that the railing fence-wise is very similar to Iolani Palace. The design is similar. That's what I mean when the families come and do, they can. That's why I'm saying organizations like Hui Malama need to reassess where they are at. They can still be supportive, they can still be advocate, but hey man, take a look and start working with families. Don't try to tell families what to do. Don't try to tell them that their way is the only way, when most of us know now that a lot of the rituals that they talk about have been gathered over time from several sources. They're not original sources. Them. They have pulled together stuff. And they ignored, when we talk about, I got to go back to Kwahai, it may come up, because I saw his name. There was a renowned kupuna, Henry Papa'auai. He was knowledgeable for health. He was involved in Kwahai. He wrote a letter before he died. He said that the iwi and the artifacts should not be buried. And he did not, and he said they were not moipu. He gave them another name. He also said that the items up at the volcano should not be buried. That's in writing. He claimed to be lineal and then he died. Okay? I got more respect for that opinion than some of the stuff that came together, especially when I know that the person that Edward calls his kumu, his teacher, Edward, the other Edward, what's his name? Kanahele, who happened to drop dead arguing over Kwahai. Okay? When his wife was arguing with Papa'auai, Edward dropped dead at the meeting. Okay? Papa'auai was the teacher of Edward Kanahele. And it's part of the record. You don't do that if your teacher, your mentor is saying certain things, how do you go contrary? Yeah, you need to think that through. Those are realities that are part of this that is not part of the NAGPRA proceeding. That is part of the Hawaiian part. That Hawaiians don't talk about publicly. But it needs to be addressed. Why do you think Halionali and Order of Kamehameha are now coming forward? I just got told yesterday. I went to the Halionali meeting. The whole statewide organization of Halionali is coming forward now to take a stand on Kwahai. And they began that in September. They went to the hearing in Washington, D.C. and started to take the stand there. Interesting, there are only 4 royal societies. They all precede Hui Malama by years. Halionali was reorganized in 1918. But its ties historically go to an organization called Huinawa. You know what Huinawa is? Anybody know what Huinawa is? Huh? No? Come on. Your turn. I need air. There are 2 Huinawas. One is like about 300, 400 AD. Second one is Kalakaua. That's Huinawa 2. Okay? It was a special organization that was part of the literati and all. And from that came the organizations. And then all the organizations at the time of the overthrow went underground. And one of the spin-offs of Huinawa is Halionali. And if you look at the name, Halionali o Hawaii Ahahui Po'o, the founding chapter is over here, Wahikahaula. Okay? How should I say this? If you look under the history of Kamehameha III, the legislative body established by that king is called Halionali. It is the House of Chiefs, the House of Lords. It is part of the governance. Okay? Yeah, it's now, so I want to thank you very, very much. And there's going to be a huge test, and if you fail to do it...
Before we end this session, would you please make sure you sign your evaluation before you leave, and would you please pa'i and give your aloha to Van Horn Diamond for sharing?
Thank you. Wait, one more. I want to recommend to you, that green sheet that you got, one of the things that serves me as a guide, because it's a colleague of mine, which is LaFrance, she is the chairperson for the Kauai Island Burial Council. The last 2 columns, please read that. If there ever is a summary of attempting to find balance into why there are burial councils and why there are efforts to do this, it's there. Thank you.
Also, if you have any follow-up questions, you're welcome to write them down.